looking at what makes something unique. And I'm going to really stress this, not necessarily superior, but unique. Some people love Macintosh computers, like a Mac Pro or something, right? MacBook Pro. Some people love PCs, and they could get into an argument, hopefully a respectful argument about which one's better, right? But they're different.
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident.
Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Barry LaBov. Barry is a two-time Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, a nationally recognized, respected author, podcast guest, and brand strategist. Barry is founder and CEO of LaBov Marketing, Communications, and Training, a full-service agency that specializes in helping clients discover and celebrate their brand differentiation. LaBov's clients include national and international brands in automotive, recreational products, premium spirits, motorcycles, PE firms, and more. Barry has a book coming out on June the 25th, which you currently can buy on pre-sale, entitled The Power of Differentiation, Win Hearts, Minds, and Market Share. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Barry. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Well, thank you, Dwight. I am a fan. I'm looking forward to this today. I'm
Yes.
really, I'm excited. I love your approach. I love that it's all about human beings and what makes somebody tick, and inspiration and overcoming adversity. So I'm ready.
Awesome. Yeah. At the end of the day, as we talked before I hit record, there's so many different forms of media, not just podcasts, that they focus specifically on one segment of the human condition. And I felt lost in my own life where I didn't have a voice, where if I didn't fit into this niche, what I had to say or what I've done for mankind wasn't important. So during the pandemic, when everybody was kind of down, I figured this was the way to go. And it's been accepted and welcomed by people. And you know what? Like I told somebody yesterday, I'm the number one student of my podcast. I'm the number one fan of my podcast because I get to choose wonderful people like you that are going to share amazing information that are going to help uplift and make people's day a little bit brighter, right? So thank you for coming on. I appreciate you investing your time in the Give a Heck family. So Barry, one of the things that I focus on with people is their origin story. And the reason being, for those new to the show, is because somebody's origin isn't just from when they get out of high school, college, university. It starts well back into their earliest recollections, and those little decisions, whether they're good or bad. Some people have a great experiences as a kid that was the reason they went a certain way. And sometimes it was a bad experience and it made them go a good way because of it. So if you could do me a favor, Barry, and share me your origin story and what key things from your childhood to adulthood that led you to where you're at currently.
I was brought up by my father and mother to be a math genius. That's what my dad wanted me to be. So when I was 3 years old, he was teaching me algebra. Here's this little 3-year-old kid learning algebra. Okay, so I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. And in second grade, because I was just a normal kid, not athletic, nothing, just an average kid. In second grade, the teacher says, okay, everybody, we're going to do mathematics. So what's 2 plus 2, Barry? And I said, well, it depends on what X is. And she said, X? Who's been teaching you algebra? I said, my dad. She said, that's it. You're out of this class. I am sending you home. So she sent me home. I felt terribly embarrassed, really bad. She wrote a scathing letter to my father saying, you're destroying this kid's mind. He'll be a lopsided individual. Stop this. So my dad stopped teaching me algebra. But what was interesting was the rest of my life, I've loved math, and math came easy to me. So I did well in algebra growing up, going through school. Another thing connected to math is music. Music is very, very mathematical. So when I was 10, 11 years old, I decided I wanted to write music. So I coerced my little brother, who was playing guitar, and I learned how to play drums, also sang, and learned how to play keyboards. My dad showed me how to play a major chord, a minor chord, and a diminished chord. So I figured out all the rest of them, depending on what note you started. It was really exciting. And I ended up writing songs with my brother in a band when I was then 14 and he was 12. I would play drums, sing lead vocal, and play keyboards with my right hand. It did not sound good. I still have tapes of it. It was pretty rough to hear. That really inspired me to realize that I wanted to be in music. I wanted to create. And the rest of my life has been focused on creating, mostly music in the beginning, but then my story did evolve past that. I'll be happy to share that. But my early years, Dwight, were really focused on the dream of writing songs, having hit songs, not being a rock star, but writing and producing and recording songs. And that's what I loved. Now I'm in marketing today. So you'd say, wow, that's kind of a strange thing. But the thing they both have in common is creativity. It's so important for me to do something that has not been done before, whether it's coming up with a slogan or an approach for a AAA baseball team, which I'm working on right now, or whether it was a song I tried to write 45 years ago. I love to be creative. So that's the driving force in my life.
Well, that's amazing. I've never heard of anybody. I've had a lot of interesting guests in the last 3 years, and I've never heard of anybody teaching their child at 3 years of age algebra. And that is shocking that a teacher would go that far to make a point, right? And and this isn't a slight on teachers, but I know so many people that are down on the ability of somebody to do better, whether it's 3 years of age or 30 years of age, they're usually insecure. They have their own insecurities, or they're not doing well in their own lives. So they need to bring down other people in order to make themselves feel better, right? So your dad probably didn't feel the greatest over what happened either.
Yeah.
And and to make somebody that's 3 years of age feel bad, that's just terrible. And again, this isn't a slight on teachers, because I have a lot of clients that are teachers, are great people. It can happen in all walks of life. You could be sharing, even at your age, you could be sharing with somebody something creative, like you said, you're very into creation, life of creation, things that are new. And there's probably people you'll run into that you can watch their body language. You can see that their demeanor, the way that they present themselves, or maybe they're outright just jerks and they say a comment because they don't get why people want to constantly be on the climb and leveling up their lives, right? So it's cute, but it's also sad that at that age you had to go through it. I
Yeah,
like
it
the
is. It is. And I'll just share this, that
yeah.
it sounds like, oh, it was great. You're this smart kid and you moved up. But in the creative profession, especially in music, you have to get used to rejection. I mean, it's heartbreaking. So when I was going to college, I originally wanted to be in the music program, and I was doing pretty good. And the head of the music department sat me down and he said, Barry, I want to help you. I like you a lot. You need to give up your dream of being a musician. I said, really? He goes, because that's what I did. I wanted to be a musician, but I decided that I wasn't going to make it. And you need to give up too. You need to give up, and maybe you can be a professor. And Dwight, I remember him saying that, and I did not get angry at him. I thought, in his own way, he was trying to guide me. But just like what you said, he was projecting. He was saying, look, I can't make it. You can't make it. I mean, come on. And if you want a real great rejection story, when I was right around that age, my wife and I were writing songs, and my goal was to get a song published by somebody important, some company, somebody. And a friend of mine said, hey, I can connect you with George Pincus. And I go, well, who's this George Pincus? He goes, oh, he's one of the most famous publishers in the world. He published the Beatles music. So I said, wow. So I got an appointment with George Pincus and 39 other publishers in New York over a 1 week period of time. So I wrote a bunch of songs, put them on a cassette tape, flew to New York City from Indiana, where my wife and I live. And my wife and I were so excited. We had 40 appointments, basically 1 hour in New York City, which means you spend like 10 minutes with somebody, run down a couple streets, spend another 10 minutes. So this is a rejection story, but it's ultimately wonderful. So if anybody out there is going, oh gosh, I'm kind of down, I just lost this or that or whatever in my business, this is an example that fueled me. I got all excited. It was Monday morning. My first appointment was with the famous George Pincus. So my wife and I get in a taxi and go way out of the city to his business building, which was a dilapidated, rundown building. It looked like it had been bombed. It was in terrible shape. Elevator didn't work. We walk all the way up the steps. I smell the stench of a cigar, knock on the door, and a woman who looks like a nurse, all dressed in white, says, what do you want? And I said, well, I'm here to see George Pincus. I have a 9 o'clock meeting. She said, oh. I come in, here's this guy with a cigar. He's like 75 years old. And he goes, okay, give her the cassette tape. So I hand her the cassette tape. She puts it in the cassette player. Literally 5, 6 seconds go by, and he shakes his head no. She then fast forwards to the next song. About 5, 10 seconds go on the next song. Not even any vocals yet. He shakes his head no. Goes to the next song, shakes his head no. Goes to the next song, the fourth song, shakes his head no. He says, pop out the cassette and give it back to this kid. So I said, okay. So he hands me the cassette and he said, kid, you have no talent. Give it up. Give it up. Quit the business. You can't write music. You don't have any creativity. Maybe you could write a country song, but you can't write anything that's worthwhile. So I said, okay. Now, Dwight, I felt like I was 1 inch tall. They didn't have to open the door to let me out. I could have walked underneath the door. I felt so small. My wife and I walk down the steps. We go outside. It's still raining out. And I said, if we can hurry up, we can get back to the airport and go back home to Indiana. And my wife, bless her heart, said, why? And I said, because I have no talent. I'm useless. I'm washed up. I said, you heard what he said. And she said, silly, why are you listening to one person's opinion? I said, you really think we need to go on? She said, oh, we're going to see every one of these 40 people this week. Now, this is absolutely the truth, Dwight. It sounds like it's like made for a movie or something. It's not. The very next appointment was with Billy Joel's publishing company. So Billy Joel had a publishing company. I walk in, I sit down, I am still depressed. I go, here's my cassette. He goes, okay. He plays all 4 of the songs all the way through. He finishes them. He pops out the cassette. I get up to take the cassette and he goes, where are you going? I said, well, I'm leaving. He said, I haven't told you what I think of your songs. And I said, well, I assumed it's a rejection and I'm moving on. He said, are you normally this down? I said, no. I said, I just talked to George Pincus and he told me I have no talent. He said, Barry, George Pincus tells everybody that. He's the guy that stole some Beatles songs and got sued for it. I said, oh, I thought he published them. He said, no, no, no. He said, George is terrible. I said, oh, okay. He said, and by the way, I want to publish one of your songs here. So I'm going to send you a contract and you will be published by Billy Joel's publishing company. Now, so I went from the very worst rejection, the very next one within an hour, success. The next 38 out of those 40, Dwight, were very pleasant, but none resulted in any publishing deal. To me, that was really a microcosm of my life in that I can get a terrible rejection. I can then get a wonderful acceptance and victory. And then I can get mostly a bunch of stuff in between that's okay, but no big deal. That was a pivotal moment for me where I realized, you know what, just because somebody says I'm useless and I'm, of no value doesn't mean I have to buy into it.
Well, I love you sharing that story. I have this conversation with people all the time. I had a conversation with a business owner yesterday. We were communicating 10 years in business, and he was talking about the fact of rejection. And I said, yes, being an entrepreneur of any type, even a person writing songs like you were and presenting to others, you're an entrepreneur. You're somebody that is willing to put yourself out on faith. And we get rejection all the time. And if you don't develop a thick skin, unfortunately, that part of the formula of being an entrepreneur or successful in business means you have to be able to accept the fact, the opinion of one person or multiple people doesn't mean that you still aren't meant to be. You just haven't spoken maybe to the right person. I know I get rejection 21 years in my career. Imagine how many individuals and businesses I've sat down with that we don't gel. There's no chemistry. It doesn't matter what the numbers say. And the reason I talked about this gentleman yesterday, he was telling me, well, I'm going to go to get, talk to this many people. And I just said to him, I said, why? Why do you need to talk to that many people? Well, because I've been given bad information and treated improperly and this and that. And I said, well, that's fair. I said, but do you think the numbers that I'm going to give you aren't going to be any different because there's only so many companies that we can present? So then you're buying on personality and chemistry.
Right.
So seeing all these people isn't going to change the numbers. It's impossible to change the numbers. You need to find what's good fit for you, for your
That's
longevity of life, because a relationship for me as a financial professional planner is for life. It's not for, 1 year, 10 years. It's for life because we're going to become friends. I'm going to understand the inner workings of your life. I'll share with you the inner workings of my life. We'll use vulnerability and acceptance of our circumstances to help work with one another. I'll benefit, you'll benefit, and we'll move forward. He looks at me completely dumbfounded because he's only like 35 years old, right? I'm in my late 50s. And he goes, wow, I've talked to quite a few people. And you know what? This wasn't even a booked appointment. This is going to make you really smile. Our hockey team in Edmonton is in the Stanley Cup.
Yes, they are. Yes, they
Edmonton
are.
Oilers.
I love it.
I was at the game last night. Well,
Ooh.
this was a guy that was sitting beside me. I'm a season ticket holder, and he had bought in somebody else's seat, and he's sitting there. And I'm a friendly dude. I just started talking to him, right? And the conversation come up. What do you do? Well, of course, I give him my little, not even 10-second spiel because I don't believe I want people to be curious but not puked on, right? So we ended up talking in between periods and in between puck drops, like when stoppage of play, right to the end of the game. He was just so excited. He says, I've made appointments. I've gone and seen people. Nobody's spoken to me like that, right? And I said, well, 21 years, I'm a people person. I'm about relationships, not transactional. And I believe that if there's no chemistry, I've walked away from clients that I could have had lots of business. Well, why would you do that? because life's too short to be involved in something that makes you feel terrible. I said, I'm not
Right.
into that. So I love that story that you shared. It is
Yeah,
life. Those listening or watching, that's the reality of life. You're gonna get rejected. Get up, put a band-aid on your boo-boo, and move forward.
you're exactly right.
Right. So I love
Mhm.
that story.
I love it.
And there's going to be people that are listening that don't understand. Like some of the younger generations kind of know who Billy Joel is and the Beatles and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But the message is there. It doesn't matter the names, right?
right.
The message is
Yeah.
there. You didn't give up. You were tenacious. So I'd like to know a little bit more about that. I had actually written this down. I was curious about that rock musician to entrepreneur of the year story. So can we talk more about that along the process of what happened after that and where it led into you being an entrepreneur of the year, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, it was primarily all an accident, Dwight. I didn't mean it to happen. So, but I was in the band and we were writing some really good songs. We had a song on American Bandstand, which many of your audience won't remember, but you will, I'm sure. But
Yes.
we also had a song recommended on the Billboard chart. We had a song on VH1 videos, all of this. It was really good. It's a really good band. And what happened was actually, and we backed up John Mellencamp in concert. So many people know John Mellencamp. We really did well. What happened over time was the members of the band, because we were struggling, we were working hard, we weren't making money, they started to kind of give up. And I was working on songs, and on the side, I was also recording jingles, you know, those irritating little songs you hear. So I was actually starting a business that was doing those irritating little jingle songs and doing quite well. So I had my feet in both camps. I was in a rock band and I was running a small business. And my little jingle business was also doing audio tapes, cassette tapes that were not music based. They were people speaking or giving speeches and things like that. And then I'll start to explain why that means anything. So I was doing that for a while and I felt unfulfilled as far as where I was going. I felt I was pushing the guys in the band because I'm always pushing people to get stuff done because come on, we can do it. Let's go. They're good. They were good guys. It's just, you know, they didn't have that determination. And my business was doing pretty good. So I went through a tragedy in my life, and it was my father became ill very quickly out of the blue. And by the time we really knew he was sick, it was too late. And he had about a year and a half left of his life. So he had a brain tumor. And at the age of 62, which is pretty young, he passed away. And it really jarred me because my father, as I shared earlier, he was a big fan of me. He supported me and he was a cheerleader for me. You know, he was tough on me. I won't go into that right now, but he was tough. But he was he was my biggest fan. He really was. And so he passes away and I was crushed. And one night I was walking outside alone, actually with my dog. I was pulling my dog around instead of walking her. But it occurred to me, my father had passed away. He had no real warning. I could pass away at any moment. I thought, you know, maybe I'm going to get something right away. There's no guarantees of how long we're going to live. And here I am playing around in two different businesses, one a band and one my jingle company. And I gave myself permission to make a decision to pursue one. So what I did was, and it surprised me. So this is bizarre. I'm talking about me surprising me, but it did. And I decided at that moment, I wanted to pursue my production company, jingle company, and retire the band. And I gave myself permission that if I felt after 6 months any regret, I could jump back in and beg the guys to rejoin the band with me. But I gave myself a chance to focus. And I jumped in and focused on the music, the jingles, and the audio recording. Now, this is an entrepreneurial story because this is how the whole thing happened, Dwight. And again, a lot of your hosts, I'm sure, or guests, I'm sure, are really sharp and they are like the all-knowing guys. And people go, wow, I'm not the all-knowing guy. So I had been working on projects for North American Van Lines, the moving company that's all over the nation, all over Canada. And I got a phone call from one of their leaders one day, and he goes, hey, Barry, we want to outsource all of our marketing department and all of our marketing to your company because we think it would be a good move. And I said, well, I don't do the marketing you're doing. I only do audio. So, I mean, I don't do video. I don't do written ads. I don't do graphic design. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll give you the names of ad agencies in the area and you can talk to them. So the guy goes, okay. So 3 months later, Dwight, he calls me again. He says, hey, Barry, I want you to take on our marketing department. We'll sell it to you. We'll give you 3 years of guaranteed business for your company. Will you do it? And I said, well, I don't do that kind of business. It's not, up my alley because it has to do with video and photography and other stuff. But here are more ad agency names and other production company names that you can go talk to. So he said, okay, well, this goes on. And about a year later, I'll still remember this the rest of my life. I get a phone call at my office and my receptionist said, hey, Barry, it's North American Van Lines. And I went, oh, no, here we go again. And he goes, Barry, I want you to take on all of our marketing and be our marketing agency for the next 3 years. And I said, look, I have given you the names of all these other companies and people that could take that on. Why do you keep asking me this? And he said, because Barry, we trust you. And I went, oh. And Dwight, in that moment, I thought, okay, let's do it. So I said, let's go. And he said, what? I said, let's do it. He said, really? He said, it's been a year. I go, I know, let's do it. And I took it on. And that next Monday, I jumped in and started taking on all of their business, their marketing, their photography, their video, their ads, all of that. Now, that sounds great. A couple of things. Their marketing department was a complete mess. I didn't know it. They had 6 people. The client did not care if I took them on. I thought I'd be the great guy and say, oh, I'll take them on. 3 of them didn't even want to work on anything associated with North American Van Lines, so they left. 2 of them were drug addicts who never showed up for work. And then one guy was a photographer who only worked like 1 or 2 hours a week. So it was a mess. They had 200 projects that had not been worked on that were backlogged. I looked into them, like 3 of them were real. The rest were nothing. So I thought, this is completely insane. But then the big avalanche hit me, and that was I started getting phone calls from the local ad agencies, all of whom were my clients because I was doing jingles for these local agencies. And they said, Barry, we hear you took on North American Van Lines marketing. That means you're a competitor. So we'll never work with you again. So I lost most of my clients at the same time. But what happened was it was a great opportunity for me to really get involved with other areas of creativity. So it was no longer just music. It was being creative in marketing and advertising. That led to me being awarded the Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young within a year. So I've won it 2 times. That was the first time I won it. It was all based on the North American Van Lines story. So you ask, that's how I went from music into marketing in basically a 1-year period of time.
Wow. I wrote, excuse me, I'm a note taker, so I write down things so we can actually focus on some of the message that you're teaching, the listening or viewing audience, and even myself. I always learn. I like the fact you talked about your father and everything that happened. And you know, he was a motivator to support you and to help push you forward in your life. How many of us don't have a motivator in our lives, right?
Mm.
We
Right.
have to look inside of ourselves, and we have to, as you made, like you said, you made a decision one day and you gave yourself permission, right? So that external validation is great to have that motivator, but at the end of the day, it's all about us. You made a decision, it was either music or do keep on doing the jingle stuff. You gave yourself permission. I love that wording because so many of us give our choices to everybody else. We become
Mm.
people pleasers. We become
Yeah.
people that are always trying to make everybody else happy. But yet, when we look in the mirror, we're not happy because we forgot we're the only one that can give us permission to accept the noise or the good things that are coming at us. And you're a person that was tenacious. I personally think we develop tenacity as we mature and grow and
Mhm.
go through those, not mistakes, I hate that word, life lessons, and we develop into the person we're meant to be, and we get more confidence, and we realize that the only person that can give us permission to succeed or fail is us. We can have external validation like your father or other people that have said, hey, you know, we're Billy Joel's production company, we want to take your music, or the person from North America Van Line saying, hey, we like you. That is key. We like you. They didn't even care if you knew what you needed to know. That is amazing. But it's also not amazing in the sense that if I could be that person back then, knowing the younger Barry, it
Mhm.
would make sense. It was all based on tenacity. They knew that if you did take it on, you were going to be tenacious. You weren't going to give up. And to me, tenacity is a superpower. So I really like that. And, you know, there's just some little things like I wrote down trust factor. That is
Mhm.
so key, whether it's one individual or a group of people. If you can resonate with somebody and literally it sounds corny, pluck on their heartstrings,
Right.
that trust factor is so powerful. It'll actually allow you to make mistakes and take more risk to help somebody as well if they have trust in you, because they know that if you try something and it doesn't work, that's okay. You're going to learn. It's not a mistake, it's a lesson. And you're going to continue to pivot and climb and help them as well as you're continuing to grow. So that story is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing it and giving our listeners the ability to connect with that.
I appreciate that. You said something about perfection, and that's something I have to tell you, in music, there is no such thing as perfection. Most of the songs that you love or I love or anyone in the audience loves were actually born of mistakes. And I'll explain that to you. Somebody's playing guitar and on his or her fret, they're playing their normal stuff. They're just goofing around. All of a sudden they go, ooh, what was that? Well, it was something different. They played something different. Their fingers were on the fret in a different way. That was a mistake, but it sounded interesting. And that person then starts going, wait a minute, I love the way this sounds. Same thing at the piano. I'll sit at the piano, I'll play, and all of a sudden I'll hit a wrong note and I go, ooh, what? And I'll go, God, that's cool. Because that's not where my fingers were normally going to go, but they went there. And we have to realize perfection does not really exist, at least for us humans, right? And in business, personal life, music, creativity, there's no such thing as perfect. Trying to be perfect is a waste of time. Embracing and identifying what is unique or slightly different, which is what my book is all about. It's all about differentiation, looking at what makes something unique. And I'm going to really stress this, not necessarily superior, but unique. You know, some people love Macintosh computers like a Mac Pro or something, right? MacBook Pro. Some people love PCs, and they could get into an argument, hopefully a respectful argument about which one's better, right? But they're different. They are different computers, different processors, therefore different aspects of what you're doing. It's the same way. Things can have differentiation and distinctiveness without being superior. They're just unique. And we have to embrace that.
Absolutely. I like how you mentioned though, music. So that little sound difference, or you playing the piano, right? It
Hmm.
ties right to brand differentiation, right? So everything's different. Like I'll be working with somebody and having a conversation, and or workshops that I developed already 20 years ago that I keep on obviously updating, and I'll go and talk about something. And obviously, when you present and you're speaking to a group of people and you have up on a board, you got it projected, you got a presentation, you get into a point where you get caught in that rut and the story's the same, which affects your energy level. And I'm not being different in any way. And then sometimes my energy will be a little different.
Hmm.
And I'll say something a little bit, it'll come out a different way. All of a sudden, somebody will come up after the fact and, oh, I really liked when you talked about this. And it was that thing that wasn't the same monotone, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Story. It wasn't presented the same way. And usually it's somebody that's maybe part of that organization that's heard me speak before or whatever. And really, at the end of the day, our uniqueness is our superpower, right?
It
And
is.
that ability to understand that fret being pressed differently or that note being played differently is something that's going to make people not be lulled. It's going to be making them going, oh, that's kind of
Yeah.
interesting. And
Hmm.
it's the same with brand and differentiating brands and stuff, because I love researching brands and how they work. And I've worked with people with, obviously, with my Give a Heck brand being my last name. And it's very refreshing to understand that that's okay. Like when you talked about music, I think of Eddie Van Halen.
Mm.
That guy, or Steve Vai, or any of these,
Oh, yeah.
you look at all these guitar players, those guys made a ton of mistakes.
Oh,
Absolutely
yeah.
made a ton of mistakes, because I love music, right? So a lot of people do, but I love the actual mechanics of it. I guess that's kind of my analytical nature. I just like the way things are created and understand that some of the most famous creations in the world today, even on a scientific level, were mistakes, right? People just don't get it. It's okay to make mistakes. It's not okay to quit, though.
That's right. It's not okay to quit, and you cannot condemn yourself for a mistake, because in many cases, what would be viewed as an error made on something could be actually magic.
Oh, absolutely. It is so true. So since we've been talking about it, I'd like to get more in depth into brand differentiation. And in a world with so much marketing and advertising noise, why is it important today more than ever? So maybe start out explaining exactly what differentiation is with brands, and then why is it so important? And because really we're a needle in a haystack when it comes to getting our brands out there.
Yeah, and what I'm going to share applies to whether you're a solopreneur or whether you're running a $10 billion company with 40,000 employees. It's all the same. And the message I have is one that I want to inspire 1 million people or more worldwide on. That's my goal. So I wrote the book because I want to inspire 1 million people all over the world. And before anybody goes, okay, now wait a minute, this guy thinks he's going to sell 1 million books. It's not sell 1 million books. Literally understanding this message and embracing it. If you're that customer, if you're that president of a huge corporation who has 20,000 people and you get this, you can help inspire 20,000 people at your company. So here's what it's all about. We believe, and I believe, and this is what the book's about, that you do not try to create, you do not try to create your brand. So what you were saying, Dwight, is we're being pressured to try to be like other people, or we're letting other people own who we are and have our voice. Okay. The key to all this is to not let that happen. You need to discover what you are. So what your brand does that's unique. Discover what makes it unique. So if you are running a manufacturing company and you've been in business for 80 years and you think your product is ho-hum and no big deal, my question is, okay, you must just be really lucky to be in that business and have that thing run for 40, 60, 80 years and have a lousy product. My point is, you're not probably lucky. You probably have some unique differentiation in your product, in your manufacturing processes, in your metallurgy, in your technology. Something is unique, and you must look for that. You must discover it. Now, my company goes in, we're hired to go in with our technology and technical team to determine what it is that is unique in a manufacturing facility or a service company. We're brought in and we're finding things, okay? So the first thing is discover it. It could be a unique process that you take. It could be your approach to how you solve problems for your customers. It could be. It could be a very, very unique instrument or tool that you use to develop or design a product or manufacture a product. I don't know what it is. I could tell you stories of a wide range of them. You determine what it is. You then create a name for it. Give it a personality. So for instance, if I ask people, have you ever owned an MP3 player? Most people say, no. If you ask people, have you owned an iPod? Well, they go, well, yeah, I've owned an iPod, or I remember what an iPod is. Well, an iPod is an MP3 player, but Apple named it. And all of a sudden you go, oh, that's interesting. That has a value. So you name it. But here's where it gets so inspiring, Dwight. And this is where most companies make a mistake. And again, big or small companies. What you do before you start telling the world, before you start sending out social media or website messaging, you gather the most important people together and celebrate this. And those most important people are your employees, the people who service, manufacture, represent what you do. You gather them together. You celebrate it. You tell them that, look, you are part of what makes us unique, distinct. We celebrate you. And here's where it gets really inspiring, if it isn't already, and that is we help people understand that what they're doing is meaningful, that these individuals actually have significance. Those listening out there, think about this. It's so difficult to retain employees. Why? Well, because today they can leave, they can go anywhere, they can work from home, they get whatever they want, right? Okay. Give them a reason to stay. Give them something more than I'll pay you a couple more cents an hour, or I'll let you work from home another day a week. Give them something more important like, hey, we're doing such and such here, and we're helping to save lives, or we're helping to make people sleep better at night because they feel comfortable knowing that we're taking care of them. That's what we're doing. And Joe and Jill and Sarah, you're doing specific things to help them. That's what we do here. That's the significance you bring to the world.
I love that significance. People need to feel purpose, right? My book is Give a Heck How to Live Life on Purpose and Not by Accident.
Right.
I found my most profound growth in my life, or that sense of feeling worthy, was when I had purpose. And by you speaking to those staff, right, the people that are really the support and mechanism and backbone of what you're creating or
Right.
presenting, giving them that significance and purpose, people will take less money.
Sure.
They'll work more efficiently in the hours that they're designed to work. They'll even work extra hours. People want to feel purpose. They're so tired of being on that hamster wheel of life and going to work, go home, get paid. They come home on the weekends because they don't feel like they're appreciated. They don't feel like they have purpose. Maybe not just at work, maybe at home. They dive into to addictions of not just alcohol and drugs. It can be addictions to sadness or avoidance. It's just, there's so many different things. But when you say that, you share with them their significance, their purpose of why they're so important. People get that, that warm and fuzzy feeling. They may don't know how to recognize it, and their spring in their step is more, their joyfulness is more, their ability to show up to work earlier than later, their ability to, you know what I mean? And I just love what you said, because I see that working with businesses actually for 30 years now, because I'm a serial entrepreneur. I had another business prior to this, in the computer industry. And when I was go in and consult with people, and I'd work with companies would hire me to come in and consult to clean up their IT department, something like
Yeah.
you were doing with in the marketing with North American Van Lines. And that's the first thing that I do is I'd have conversations. We'd sit in a room, I'd get them all together and say, hey, tell me what you feel.
Hmm.
Why does it matter what I feel? Because it does. And in order for you to feel significant, to feel that you have a purpose, I need to know what you think you do. What's your value? And
Right.
you'd be shocked when people tell you. You probably wouldn't. You'd probably be the one person that wouldn't be. A lot of people are shocked. I'd get people, even from the chief of police, when I did some consulting work for the city of Edmonton for the police department. I'd go in and have conversations with him, and he was always like, "How old are you?" And I'd tell him, because we'd have such deep conversations about purpose. And I didn't realize my own purpose until I was, in my 40s, right? And
Hmm.
at that time I was in my later 20s. So this is a journey, is what I'm getting at. People watching or listening, this is all a journey. Don't beat yourself up, even if some of this seems overwhelming. It's not. The secret for all of this is to take a baby step and live a life of action until you create the belief. And the number one thing is the C part of ABC. Be consistent. Be consistent in your resolve of what you want to accomplish, and you will succeed, just like Barry has and so many other people have. Those that quit and decide they want to just be at a job or in a career working for somebody else, there's nothing wrong with that either.
Hmm.
You found your purpose. So when you do find your purpose, back to what we talked about before, give yourself permission to accept that and be okay with it, right? But
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
not okay, don't sit on your laurels. Go out and do
That's right.
something.
See, I love that. Dwight, I'll share a story I have not
Sure.
shared. It's in my book, but I have not shared this story on a podcast, and you just inspired it. You're talking about finding your purpose. I worked with a phenomenal leader about a decade or two ago. He was an Amishman. So he was an
Oh,
Amish man who ran an RV recreational vehicle company. So it almost sounds like I'm about to tell a joke. Here's an Amishman running an RV company, but his company built beautiful, beautiful RVs. They were phenomenal. Okay. And I met him, and he was a really gentle, gentle soul, very, very Christian, very religious man. And we were talking, and he said, I've been running this company for years. He said, but this wasn't my plan. I said, what was your plan? And he goes, well, I was a theology major. I wanted to be a minister. And he said, I kind of feel I've disappointed the Lord in what I'm doing. I feel like I'm really not doing what the Lord wanted me to do. And I said, well, what's your relationship with your employees? And he said, oh, every day I have different people coming to me talking about what's going on in their lives and asking for counseling and asking for any kind of insights. And I try to make sure they're in good shape. And I personally know each of them. And I said, Virgil, you are a minister. You are the minister of the 350 people that work at this RV company. You have become a man of the cloth. That's what you are doing. And to me, you think about that's what he did. He could have been in charge of a little church somewhere in the middle of Indiana and, had 50 to 100 people, and that he would have been great. But instead, he had 350 people every day who he ministered to. So we may have a title, but we may really have a different job in life.
no, absolutely. What has the Lord wanted me to do? Well, I'm a Christian, I'm a practicing Christian, and things happen for us, not to us.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's hard for us to see the forest for the trees and understand what are we good at, right? And I have people
Right.
say to me, and I'll talk to them, well, did I decide to do this because I was good at it, but yet it wasn't really my passion? And I'll say, well, what do you do with your career? Like, what have you accomplished? Well, I've done this and done this. And what would your employees say if I was to talk to them? well, I believe they'd say this and that. And I watched their body language and we're communicating. And well, you're exactly where you need to be. You're
Right.
thinking too hard about it instead of just celebrating and accepting that you are where you're there because you were designed to be there, right? You don't always have to search for more. And so many people search for more because they see a family member or a friend or somebody else doing better, or maybe it's even in the same career or industry or business. They're doing better. So they want to strive to be more. They can't, people say, well, when is it enough? Well, for me, enough is I like what I'm doing. I just continue to level up in how I approach, how I communicate, how I interpret what people are saying. I've become more of a people person, and understanding how what makes them tick so that I can ensure that I can serve them better. But I don't need to change my career to become a better person. I don't need to make more money to become a better person. Did it happen overnight? People watching or listening? No, this was realizations over many conversations with myself and with others, and having that dope effect where I smack myself in the forehead because I really had the answer and I've been wasting weeks, months, years to get to that answer. Sometimes it's just as simple as that you're meant to be where you're meant to be, like that guy ministering to his company, right? He really was a minister. Who's to say a flock of 50 is any less important than a flock of 350, or being in a church where there's 1,000 people, right?
Right.
You can be ministering to one person at a time, right?
Yeah.
Just don't complicate things is the message that I'm hearing. And just realize that you are doing what you thought you were doing. You just didn't have somebody as great as Barry saying, hey brother, you're doing it already. And I can't even imagine. I would have loved to have been a fly in that room watching it, the light bulb effect
Mhm.
with that gentleman. I bet you
Yeah,
his realization and his happy level went up.
it did. And he was a phenomenal mentor to me. And it was maybe the only time I gifted him with any kind of insights, because he outdid me in that category. But it's important, I believe, to look at what you do and, like you said, accept it and also honor it. You're making a difference. There's a reason that somebody is happier when you're with them. As an example, I believe that we have to look at how we were treated and make sure we treat others the way we want to be. So, you mentioned all the rejection that I've gone through as an example with my children, and I helped coach their baseball teams and their basketball teams as they were growing up. I made sure that every kid on the teams, including my kids, of course, was treated with respect, but also was given a nickname that was a positive one that had to do with what they did best. So they could be, whatever the human vacuum cleaner was a girl who was the best fielder, and all these kinds of things, and uh, giving kids this pride to know they did something unique that was valuable, not a participation award, but something that was their award because they did something really well. And a little bit of that, whether it's in your business or your personal life, goes a long way. It's a purely positive thing. Just super personal note, just yesterday, I went to my grandson's graduation of his kindergarten class. Okay, so he's 6 years old. And he got up there and they gave all the kids, I was so impressed they did this. All the kids got awards for what they did special. When they got to him, they said, this is a boy who thinks outside of the box. He is our creative classmate, Cooper. And Cooper gets up and he held that card, that little award, with so much pride. He was so proud. And I said, because I was hoping he would realize his grandfather was, kind of a creative guy too. I said, where do you think you get all that creativity? And he goes, Papa, I get that creativity in my brain. And I said, okay, great. You're right. It did come from your brain. But that that elevated that little boy he knew that those crazy ideas he's coming up with, they're kind of neat. And they're not stupid. They're not wrong. He's creative. Well, that applies to all of us.
Absolutely. I love the fact that you bring up these little personal things and you're sharing things you haven't talked about before. I have
Right.
5 grandkids and I have one great granddaughter as well. And I actually had, before we got on here this morning, I was sitting here working, and my kids are all adults. One of my daughters come in from out of town. She's a nurse in a place called Calgary, south of me. And
Sure.
she come here and she picked up one of my granddaughters from one of her other sisters, and they stayed here last night. My granddaughter wakes up this morning and she comes running in. And the reason I bring this up is just their version of what they see the world. She comes to me, and I'm upstairs. I'd gone up to my room to check on something, and she comes to the door and she goes, "Wow, Papa, you have such a beautiful room." And and the reason I say that is I hadn't thought of it that way. We get older and our brain kind of just accepts things and we
Yeah.
stop appreciating it. And she runs a little bit farther in my room and looks around the corner and goes, "Wow, you have such a big bathroom. What is it like to have your own bathroom?" Right? And I'm just going, I do gratefulness exercises twice a day minimum, right? Of gratitude. I gotta have that. Hey, I got a beautiful bedroom. Hey, I got a giant ass bathroom. All
Right.
right.
You got
Just
to get that
those,
bathroom in that
and
right away.
your little grandson talking about, that create, and especially with you being a creative person, going
Yeah.
back to your origin, being a
Yeah.
person that wants to create and do things first. That must have just your heart must have been just like, yeah, and a smile
I loved it.
on grandpa's face.
I
Oh
loved
man.
it. I was tearing up. I was crying.
Oh
It
dude.
it meant a lot.
It would mean a lot because the seeds of greatness get watered in us, and we hope that our progeny, or whatever you want to call them, our children and our grandchildren, we hope that it flows downhill in a great way,
Yeah.
right? And that just it makes me proud. I don't even know him. I just like,
Yeah.
wow. And I was a couple of weeks back. My two of my grandsons are in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Papa,
Oh,
come watch. So I come there and they're so excited. They got new stripes put on their belt and they're just like pumped right up about
yeah.
it. Right. And it's just, we can have joy and gladness and through the lenses and lives of others, even back to what you talk about with your
Absolutely.
employees, right? You talk with the person ministering to his employees. Are you talking to your employees about how their importance in that, their joy? If you're that unattuned to the joy of others, you're missing out in life. By
Absolutely.
you saying something that makes them feel better, you're manipulating them away from a feeling unworthy. You're giving them
That's
an
right.
opportunity to feel great, and that energy is so precious, right? Right from that employee to our grandchildren, our own children, and
Right.
even myself meeting my great granddaughter at Christmas time, because she lives in Vancouver Island. For those that don't realize where that is, it's in the Pacific Coast. It's above
Hmm.
California. That'd be
Yeah,
about
I've
as
been there.
accurate as I could
I've
be.
been
Oh
there.
yeah. Vancouver Island's
Beautiful.
beautiful. Oh, absolutely. Right. That's where he lives, my 20-year-old grandson, and he's got a baby now. And it's just, life. I live for memories and creation of memories and uplifting people, and my core values works at the last part of it.
Right.
It really is. I want to work to support and service others, but if I don't have the rest, my faith and my family, like, what's the point? All
That's right.
right. So thank you for sharing that. One of the things I wanted to talk more about is brand image, and how it's overlooked with the customer experience.
Right.
And can you explain more about what the role of that customer experience and how it plays into the key aspects of setting up the brand correctly?
The customer experience, and I'll try to be really specific here. I am talking about what it's like to be your customer. So we can call that a brand experience, and that could be virtual. So think of Amazon. You don't meet anybody from Amazon, or it could be in person. Think about walking into a car dealership or going to a store to buy shoes. The brand experience in the eyes of the consumer. is exactly the same as the brand. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you want to buy a wonderful new car and you see it on TV and the commercials are so great. And you go, oh, I gotta buy this car. It's amazing. I'm going into the dealership tomorrow. You go into the dealership, you're ignored. Finally, somebody says, what do you want? You then say, look, I'm here. I want to look at such and such car. They go, okay, well, what do you want? Well, I want a test drive. Well, we don't have an extra car for a test drive. Okay, well, can you give me an idea about the car? Here's a brochure. Okay, thanks a lot. And the person walks out, and what do they say? They say, I will never buy that car for the rest of my life. Well, here's the reality. The people who manufactured that car, the brand itself, they have no idea that this horrible experience that you just experienced happened. They have no idea. But you, the consumer, and I am exactly the same way, I'm going, I'll never buy that brand again, when in reality, it was the experience. It was the person who wasn't trained in the type of customer and in the type of what we call psychographics, the mindset, not just the demographics, the mindset of that customer, what they're looking for, all of that. If your dealerships, let's say you have 800 people at 200 dealerships selling your product, if you don't train those dealership people, then you have literally 800 different customer experiences every day that are happening, because it's 800 different people giving their version of a customer experience. So all of us, small or large companies, have to identify what is the experience we want to offer. So at my company, what we share with our people, because we work with really big companies like Macallan Scotch and Audi and Volkswagen and Mercedes-Benz and Harley Davidson, large companies, as well as small ones, small family businesses. We explain to our people that we are not arrogant. We are not the obnoxious people. We are not the all-knowing people. We are not. We are also not purely the order takers. We are the people behind great people. So we make our clients look like heroes. We help their brands look like heroes. And we have to provide ideas and suggestions and insights. If all we do is say, yeah, what do you want? We are not delivering the LaBov brand experience. So each company has to identify, what is our brand experience? Seriously, are we the friendly people that goof around and laugh and giggle all the time? Okay, if that's us, that's us. Are we the knowledgeable people? Are we the arrogant people who are all-knowing and need customers to almost, worship us? What are we? But the bottom line, Dwight, your question was, what role does it play? Your brand experience is the experience, is the brand as well to your customers. It is everything.
That makes sense. When you talk about the brand experience and are we joyful? Are we miserable? Are we, whatever we are as a company, how key is the name of the brand? Like I look at so many different things and somebody will tell me a name of a company or the brand, and I have no absolute clue what it is, or nor do I care to know what it is, because the name doesn't even spark curiosity in me.
Well, the name is very important. However, sometimes you're going to have a name. You got Hellman's ketchup or something, Hellman's mustard. Okay, well, Hellman's. I don't know if that's a great name or not. You have Heck. My last name is LaBov. So you go give a heck so people understand it. I have gone LaBov and beyond, which helps people pronounce LaBov. So it's LaBov and beyond.
Which is awesome.
Our
I love
slogan
it.
is go beyond. So we're trying to make do with a name that I was given, and you are too. So the name is really important, but it's not everything. Just like the logo is important, it's not everything. You can have really a lousy name. I mean, what does Amazon mean? I don't know. What does Google mean? I don't know. All right. But they've been able to promote it and be consistent in what they're doing. So, it's important. It's not everything.
That makes sense. I was, I look at it as a fact of a key as a gate entry to, instead of having that closed door, that it literally attracts them to at least want to go to my website, for an example, like Give a Heck.
Right.
Because I have people trying to guess what Give a Heck was, and they just overreach, right? It's just, it is what it is. What does heck mean to you? Well, let's see. It's said probably in the last second, it's been said 1,000,000 times around the world. It's used, even when I was in Europe last year for 3 weeks, it's used constantly as slang.
Right.
It's used as whatever. It doesn't matter. That's exactly why we play on our last names, just like you, LaBov, right? It just makes sense for us to do it. And then at the end of the day, what experience are they going to have with me is so key, right? But the sad thing is in my industry, dealing with people, they've dealt with so many charlatans, so many shysters in the financial world that have taken advantage of them, that I have to put in do more things to make it so that people can know, like, and trust me, and it's not finance based. The podcast, right? My book, right? Just going and speaking at events about, one of my topics of speech is I like talking about the worst year of my life, right? And it has to do with the experiences of life that have affected me. But by people getting to know, like, and trust me, maybe they come to me to get some life coaching and some financial help. It doesn't matter where they are in the world. I may not be able to sell them a product, but I can help them with the experiences of their life become purposeful. So that's why my tagline is, some people might think it's too long, but helping people live life on purpose, not by accident. Right? What does that mean? Well, to me, it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's just trying to get past that barrier of entry to help people. Right?
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, so I've been working on it now for a few years with some different people. I've had so many great people on, and so far the perspective of branding is the most refreshing thus far from you. And I'm being
thank you.
totally sincere, and I've had quite a few people on over the last 3 years. Not to take away from them, they're great people, but your explanation and your heart comes through in what you're teaching us, right? The knowledge you're sharing, and that is so important. Not to say again they don't have it, you've got it in spades, right? So I really appreciate that. You're welcome. So because of all these things you've shared, you've won over so many people, your competition, because of your uniqueness and your style. How do you share that though with the companies that want to deal with you? And you talk about, you don't want to give out just that brochure as the car dealership. You don't want to, oh, sorry, we don't have a car for you to test drive. What do you utilize in your own marketing strategy so people will understand that you are completely different? What are your key tactics, strategies for that?
I have a differentiator myself. So our company has a 5-step process to branding. And 2 of the steps are not done by anybody else. The other 3 are done by everybody. So I'm not saying we don't do things others do, but we will initially start off with a brand assessment, talking to people about the brand. And I won't go into great depth, but we do that. We then do something nobody does. We send in a technical team. This technical immersion group of ours goes into facilities. Nobody else does that. They're going to find what is unique, and they will deliver back to us what are those potential differentiators. We then put a plan together. A lot of companies put plans together. And once we jam, we do a creative collaboration session with the client. We then do what a lot of people do. We'll do execution, which could be logos or websites. The 5th step that nobody else does is we require the client to do what I shared earlier, celebrate it first internally with their employees, and then cascade it out to others who represent the brand. So it could be suppliers, it could be dealer distributors, it could be the community, it could be loyal customers, and then, have the rest of the world learn of it. So that's my 5-step process. And I have shared it with clients and they've said, okay, I want to work with you. Period. Now,
That's awesome.
it doesn't work with everybody. Some people go, yeah, we already know how to do what we want to do. And I go, great. It's not a good fit. But yeah, that's what we do. That's
There's
my
nothing,
differentiation.
there's nothing wrong with walking away from people and then
Yep,
walking away from you, right?
that's right. It's
We're
okay.
not meant, we're as unique as our fingerprints, and not everybody's is designed to like Dwight or like Barry, and that's okay.
Right.
People get, I talk with clients and they get butt hurt because they lost this contract and they had the best, so that becomes technical. They had the best quote, they had the
Right.
best pricing, the best time frame. And I
Right.
said, well, you missed something somewhere. Right. And I'm not a brand person that per se, but
Right.
I can have conversations with people. What did you say? Like, we'll just have conversations. Maybe
Right.
it was the way you presented yourself. Maybe your
Could be.
report or presentation was too methodical and cold.
Right.
Maybe you
It's
didn't read the
something.
maybe you didn't read the room properly when you were talking to the person you talked to. Maybe you didn't ask the right questions to get the answers to make a presentation that you knew was going to work for them. It's so much
Yeah.
more involved than just here's my report. Here's my
Right.
presentation. Here's my
Right.
quote. Right? People just don't get that. So I appreciate that. That's great. And you've shared, I was going to ask you this question, but just our conversation, great conversations, the answers come out and things
Yeah.
come out before I even ask, because I was going to ask about a major pivot and growth. Well, you talked about
I
the
talked
the
about, yeah.
gentleman with the trailer company. That was just amazing. So this has been such an amazing conversation.
Hmm.
We're going to wrap this up and talk a little bit about your book some more, if you wouldn't mind, The Power of Differentiation, right? So,
Right.
what was it like writing that book? And can you share any one light bulb moment that happened when you were writing that book that the users, like, pardon me, users, not users, readers will experience?
The book title is The Power of Differentiation. The subtitle tells really the whole story, which is
Okay.
win, W-I-N, win hearts, minds, and market share. And what really the book is about is that order. It's winning the hearts of the people who represent your product, your brand, your service, winning their minds, really going into what makes you different and explaining why so they get it. And then sharing that with them and the world to win the market share. And as I wrote the book, it became more apparent to me through COVID, as an example, that so many people were giving up on their jobs and walking off the workplace, that we need to give people a reason to stay, a reason to feel significant, a reason to feel what they're doing has meaning, or you're going to lose people. The pivot for me in the book was to really understand that that is every bit as important as differentiating what you do. So that's what's beautiful for me. That's how the book came together. It's a story of stories. That's what the book is. It's got dozens and dozens of examples of successful people and companies who have faced that challenge and came out on top, and in some cases made history. And it's
Wow.
available now, by the way. You were asking me too on that. It is now available on Amazon and other major stores. It's on Simon and Schuster's websites worldwide. Uh, I think it's a book that people would really enjoy.
That's awesome. I'll make sure that I put that information within the show notes that people can find at giveaheck.com. I'll make sure that all your social media so people can reach out that way, and your contact information. And yeah, so those that are new to the show, just go to giveaheck.com, go to the top, click on podcasts. You'll see Barry's smiling face, and you'll be able to find abbreviated show notes below, including even a timeline where you'll be able to, if you were listening to this and you really liked a specific section, it'll actually break down, this is what we talked at this time, this is what it'll be talked at this time. So it'll make it easier, because sometimes people just want to hear one specific section again, and it's nothing worse than click, rewind, when was that, and then they get frustrated. So you can find that as well within the abbreviated show notes. So the last thing I'm going to ask you, Barry, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
I think it's important to realize that You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to be superior. You have to realize that you do have uniqueness, distinctiveness, unique talents, and focus on them and accept the fact that, hey, you will not please everybody, but the people you do please will love what you offer.
That's awesome. Yeah, our uniqueness is for certain people and not for others, and that's
That's
okay.
right.
So I appreciate that. So, one of the things that I do want you to verbally say is just so people can hear it that are listening in their vehicle or at the gym, obviously the people watching as well. What's the best way for them to reach you then?
There are two different ways to reach me. One is on my company's website, which is labov.com, LABOV.com. The other is my personal website, which is Barry, BARRY, LaBov.com. Reach out, leave a message. There are free download gifts to any of the podcast listeners. Please do that. You can also click and pre-order my book. So there are a lot of ways. I've made a lot of friends through the podcast and have begun a lot of really nice relationships.
That's fantastic. And again, just to reiterate to the people watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform, just go to giveaheck.com, one-stop shop to find out any information about Barry and his company and what he's doing for people. Deserves the light of day even more than it already has. Right, I'm a small little speck in the big cog of Barry's life, but hopefully we can introduce one more person to the company, to the greatness of what you've accomplished through hard work and tenacity. And I appreciate you being on, Barry. Any last final words before I wrap up the show?
Well, my last final words are, Dwight, I appreciate your very positive, heartfelt presence throughout all of this. You are probably the best listener that I've ever had the honor to guest on a podcast with.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. That means a lot. I put a lot of work into this, and hearing that from you means a lot. Thank you very much, brother. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Barry. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck.
Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.